Welcome to episode 2. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
even know how
wonderful to
we
be here.
start
How
the.
are we going to intro this? I just
Yeah,
think we just dive into it, right?
I think so. Although I'm not a podcast listener. There's pretty much only one podcast that I started listening to like 4 months ago. And I have found that after hearing the intro song over and over again, it kind of does give this emotional response like, oh, we're starting the podcast. So maybe
It's
it
a
is.
Pavlovian
Yeah,
response
yeah,
here on the podcast. Yeah, I'm going to have fun.
yeah,
Yeah, then maybe we need a jingle, right?
yeah. That's nice. Yeah, I was getting feedback from my brother. Shout out to my brother. Thank you for listening to the podcast. That's nice. He actually listened. Well, I have the impression he listened to the whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, but he really wanted to give feedback on the sound, but he also was really anxious to do it because I made a whole fuss about well-meaning friends giving feedback. He's
yeah,
but he said that because he listens to a ton of podcasts, like a lot,
right.
while he's working. And he said that the main thing he noticed was that our sound was just not as professional as the other podcasts he listens to.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's okay. We're not professional podcasters, so what can you
Yeah.
expect? What I was going to propose to our listeners is that
Yes.
if you want the sound to improve, I'll buy a new microphone if we can get to 500 subscribers. So that's
Hey, that's
yeah,
great. Yeah. I love it. 500 subscriber challenge. Yeah, let's do
yeah.
it.
That makes us professional podcasters then, right? I think it doesn't
Right.
really unlock everything yet, but it's yeah.
Exactly. I mean, in the US, I think 500 unlocks more than it does in Europe. Yeah.
Okay, so we need 500 subscribers. We need 3,000 valid public watch
Impressions.
hours.
Okay.
Right now we have 85. So we need 3,000 in the last 65 days.
Oh,
So it's a
that's challenging.
rolling thing so as well. So that's hard. And either that or we need 3 million shorts views. We have 4.7 thousand. So
Which is, we're a thousandth of the way.
yeah, I think I did the math that at this rate we won't meet, meet the. But anyway, we
Yeah.
will, we will see.
Who knows? Maybe we'll go viral somehow for saying something completely crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if that's good,
Well,
but I guess you have to say crazy things to go viral. Are you restarting your computer?
I am not. No, I got the sound up on another device, I think. Hopefully that won't annoy us. Yep, it's all good.
All right. So how was your month?
Yeah, my month. Yeah, super crazy. So here the teaching semester commenced sort of in April. And that means I actually have to face the reality of teaching and going into a lecture theatre and giving a lecture. And after a couple of months, you get rusty. But this year, I have the pleasure of doing advanced quantum theory. So this is one of my favorite lectures. I've done it a ton of times before, and I've reached that point where you see, remember those lecturers, professors? They would just come into the lecture theatre with a piece of chalk, and they would just talk for an hour, like no notes, no nothing. And I'm just about reaching that point.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's
that
really great.
dominated my month. Yeah. And your month? What you been up to?
I can't even believe it's been a month. Yeah, I'm really bad at answering that question. I even can't do the on Monday morning people are like, how was your weekend? I'm like,
Yeah. But let me prompt you. You've been very active on YouTube making all these lovely shorts.
Yeah, making the shorts was it was interesting. And in fact that might lead into something, although I wasn't quite ready to talk about it this early in the episode.
Okay.
But yeah, making the shorts was interesting. So I'm experimenting with different kinds of software. So for the shorts, I'm using this program called Opus Clip. It's some AI
Opus Clip.
program. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it you like upload the video and then it just goes through and finds interesting clips. And then some of them like sound interesting, but then when you listen to them, you're like, this is gibberish. Why would you have picked this thing? But some of them are really nice. So I went and pre-prepared a whole bunch of these clips and uploaded them, and I guess they've been coming out every day. And it's kind of
Yeah,
fun
it's
when you pre-upload stuff, because then you kind of forget, and then it's like, oh,
yeah.
this clip just came
Oh,
out.
it's even funner for me because like I haven't done anything. You're doing all the work. It's fantastic. And every day, so it'll pop up on my YouTube. You know, here's a video a short you might like.
I don't think of it as work. I use it for procrastination when I'm trying to do other stuff. And
Come on. That's the power technique of all effective people,
I
right?
know.
It's to actually, yeah,
I was thinking
to
about
make
this.
procrastination doing the thing you want to do.
Yeah, there's this really amazing essay about this. You've probably come across it. It's on this website that's from like 1992, and the guy hasn't
Right.
updated this website. And I always forget the name because it's not a very descriptive name. I think it might be called structured procrastination. Is that?
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen this. I'm sure.
And so, and the guy's like, "Oh, I'm writing this essay. Finally got around to writing this essay that I've been wanting to write for ages, and it's not because it's the most important thing I'm supposed to be doing right now. It's exactly because I'm supposed to be doing something else." And then he goes on and talks about the benefits of. He's a professor. He talks about the benefits of this structured procrastination, where like you get all of this work done by doing the work by not doing the work you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do feel like as if I've really since I left my job and started actually, trying to run my own business, I think I've just been the queen of structured procrastination, because it's like there's maybe like 5 things I'm supposed to be doing, and the spotlight just keeps shifting. It's like the spotlight of what I'm supposed to be doing shifts, and then the spotlight of what I'm actually doing is shifting, and it just keeps doing this.
Yeah.
And over the course of a month, I do all the things I'm supposed to do at a much higher level of effectiveness, because each time I'm powered by my motivation to do it, rather than because I'm gonna write an essay about this. Actually, I came across this video. Maybe it was a short or something. I don't watch shorts, but I've been watching them
Right.
now since I've been
Yeah.
doing this. And it was this video of this woman practicing the piano, and it's like divided into like on the left and on the right. And on the left, she's talking about the benefits of forcing yourself to like practice consistently every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the cumulative benefits, and it's like day 1 2 hours, day 2 2 hours, day 3 2 hours, and it goes on. And then there's the person who practices from motivation, and so
Right.
first day 4 hours, second day half an hour, third day 0. And it's supposed to be implying that being consistent and disciplined is the way to achieve your goals. And I think that's the way that most people are taught, and I think there is a lot of merit in that, and I think it applies to a lot of people, especially people who are specialists or wanting to be specialists in something.
Mm-hmm.
And it just does not work for me. I know it's the optimal technique, does not work for me. I can't do it. And I got really triggered by this video, because
Right.
I think it missed the fact that okay, if you only have one thing that you want to achieve in your life, fine. But in my case, like I was saying, if there's those 5 things and I just keep shifting where the spotlight is, I put those 4 hours in to each of those
Mm-hmm.
things whenever I'm motivated. And I feel like, over the course of a long amount of time, I actually am putting in more effort than I would if I was just disciplined and forced
Right.
myself to work on the thing I'm supposed to be working on right now. So
Yeah. I mean, it
maybe
certainly
I'm just like
resonates.
cheating. Maybe I'm not cheating. Maybe I'm what's
I,
the word? In denial. But anyway,
no. Look, if you find the pattern that works for you, that's fantastic. And it seems that you can consistently power on through the month with this mode of operation. So this certainly brings up something close to my heart. So I've been asked for advice lots and lots of times over the past some years, 20 years, I guess, for like how to do things. What's some good advice on how to be a better PhD student, or good advice on working and productivity? Everyone loves productivity, and it used to be, and now I'm sort of ashamed that I thought there was this one true way to be productive, and it's kind of like this you got to do a little bit every day thing. And I did it for a couple of years. I managed to force, and here's the operative word, force force
Mm.
myself to do at least 20 minutes a day of a thing. I don't know what the thing was. Sometimes
Yeah,
writing a paper for about 6 months or
yeah.
whatever. And sure, I got that thing done, and I got
Mhm,
that thing done really well. But like everything else was just a disaster. And
mhm.
so, so then I gradually began to understand that the advice may work for some people and may not for others. And this sort of it touches on something that I find as someone in a guiding role. I mean, you're also in a guiding role, right? Uh, in a mentoring role. It only dawned on me recently that you got to structure your advice to the person you're talking to, right? Because there is no such thing as universal good
Yeah,
advice.
I mean, I do in sentiment agree with you. But at the same, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but at the
Yeah,
same
do it.
time, I feel like if you try and structure it to them, maybe you don't hit the mark. Maybe the onus should be on the person to take advice from 10 different people who give it, with full
Mm,
authenticity, and then figure
okay.
out which
Mm.
one works for them. But sorry to cut you off. I'll let you
No, I
finish.
mean, okay, yeah, maybe there's a good point there as well. I still don't know if what the right way to go ahead is. But so recently, I got asked. Someone visited us and asked, "Do you have any advice for me?" I was like, "It was a PhD student at another university," and I was like, for 5 seconds, I was taken completely aback because
Mhm.
I didn't even know where to start. Like, and
Yeah.
then I said, like, I could talk for 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 hours on advice for PhD students, but I think that it was an excellent way to start a conversation because then I could start asking, what is it that
Mm.
you feel is a pain point in your life right now? What is it that you are finding challenging? What is it that you feel stressed about? Maybe, and so by having a discussion rather than just one way information, I felt like the discussion went to a better place than if I just.
No, I think
Otherwise, I'm
that's
just giving an essay, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think, well, having the discussion is probably the best way. Um, but I do recall having various conversations where people would ask for advice, and I'd always, try to be measured and be like, this is just my opinion, it's just what
Hmm.
works for me, don't like take it as gospel. And I remember someone saying, of course I'm not taking it as gospel, I'm asking 9 other people. And at that point I was like, oh yeah, of course. And then I just
Yeah.
felt really, oh, I can just tell you what I think and you can figure out if you want to
So maybe this is meta advice for everyone, right? If you're going to ask someone for advice, ask 9 other people as well.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
You can't go wrong with that advice.
Yeah. But I thought it was interesting what you were saying about applying this, do a little bit every day
Hmm.
thing. Because I think I mentioned this on the last episode as well, that in my 30s, I really figured out how to be productive. Like I felt like in my 20s, I kind of just very organically did things and somehow I managed to get everything done, but I felt
Mm.
I wasn't really doing things the right way. And then in my 30s, I became a disciple of David Allen's Getting Things Done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's one of the most life changing books. I've read it many times, and every time I read it, I discover something new. And I feel like it was responsible for a lot of my accomplishments and career progression. And once I figure, it's a complicated system to figure out, but once you figure
Hmm.
it out, I was enormously productive. I was able to do so many different things. Um, but then what I realized is that while I'm being so productive and able to do all of these things, I'm just not enjoying it. I just feel like
Right.
I'm
You're
doing
just kind
all
of
of these
miserable. Yeah.
tasks, these long lists of things. I've got all my projects that are all broken down into next actions. I know when I'm supposed to do each one of them. It's all matched to my context. And I wake up in the morning and I go through and I tick through all the things. And then, wow, all these papers get written and all these courses and all
Yeah.
this stuff gets done. And I'm like, but I'm like not having fun. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
now, I kind of went to the other extreme and I'm back to very organically just having the time of my life. And it's been a year and I've kind of I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I've gotten that out of my system. And now I need to figure out how to balance those, how to enjoy what I'm doing and be productive at the same time.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and kind of this, maybe what we were just saying, this structured procrastination is part of that, but I
It's
still don't feel like it's quite a framework. What I want is a productivity framework for generalists. And I feel like
right.
I haven't come across that yet. Although I was at an event last week talking to this woman that I just met and telling her the same thing, and she's like, "Do you have ADHD?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And she's like, "My son has ADHD, and he had a lot of problems with this." And she recommended this book, The Disorganized Mind. I don't know if you've come across it, but
I definitely heard. I haven't read it myself. I mean, like this moving spotlight with 5 different things being juggled all at the same time. It's certainly, let's say, is a feeling shared by many people in the neurodivergent community, and they're often super frustrated, and they quickly land up in burnout when they try and be productive in the traditional sense, because there's this whole negative feedback spiral that can very quickly develop when your mind is maybe better at juggling 10 different thoughts at once. And it's that, oh, I didn't do any progress on my thing today. Oh, I suck. Oh, I didn't do any progress on my thing today. I suck. And then this feedback spiral develops, and then you lose motivation to work on that thing. And then you're pushing yourself through just life, and you just don't even know why you're doing it anymore. And then you end up in burnout. So it's just like this super classic burnout spiral when you force people who have maybe a different neural makeup to follow the traditional advice of these patterns of behavior and productivity.
yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I've never been diagnosed with anything, and I don't know whether I necessarily want to pursue any diagnosis. I do find, but it's always easy when you read, symptoms of anything. You're like, oh, I have that.
Yeah. Oh,
Pretty
yeah,
sure
yeah,
everything.
I have that. Yeah.
So I don't know. But I did start reading the book in the hopes that maybe there'll be a couple of practical techniques that I can pull into my system for generalists. So
Yes, I mean, like, put it this way, what works for neurodivergent people, there might be overlap with what works for you, whatever the situation might be. There's good in everything. And I often find that, like, you read these things and it's like, that's an idea I never would have thought of. So it comes from completely left field if it's tailored for someone else completely.
yeah.
It can be helpful. But like, I'm going to ask you a question. Like, are you ever bored anymore? Have you experienced boredom? I'm really curious about this.
No.
Yeah, I thought that
But
you
I
said
don't
that.
think
Yeah.
I've ever. I don't like entertainment. Like my entertainment is work usually, or practical things like baking or cooking or gardening or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but I certainly I never plan anything for the weekend, and I never run out of things to do for the weekend.
Yeah.
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 Um,
Yeah. I I remember being bored. Right. It was a thing that happened when I was a student at university before I got into what I was studying,
mhm.
and it was just this whole weekend would be ahead of you, and you didn't have anything to do. There was, yeah, sure, you could clean the kitchen, but who's going to clean the kitchen, right? And so that was it. And it was Brisbane in the 90s, so
Mhm.
there was nothing really happening on the weekend. And there were no books. You could listen to the radio, but like there was only 2 radio stations, and
How much older are you than me? Because I don't remember this.
not that much older. Um, what am I? 77 was when I was born.
Oh, I'm like, you look good for 77.
77, yeah.
Yeah, so you're 5 years older than me. So no, 6 years older.
So like the internet was happening when you were at uni.
But I never used the internet on weekends, and I didn't use. I mean, when did I use it? I I think only in like honors did I start using the internet, and like memes started to be a thing, and um yeah, but go on. So yeah, you had nothing to do on the weekends
So,
and you were bored.
yeah, so I was bored. I remember being this sense of being bored and not knowing what to do, and just being kind of really, it was dull. And there's nothing on TV. It was just dull. And then by the time I got to the research level, I was never bored again. Like, because
Mm.
it was just, there was always something more interesting to take a look at. And so that's the last time I remember it. And now since then I haven't been bored. And recently it's sort of, even it's been a bit more horrible, right? Because then you become overwhelmed with just the stupid admin tasks that you need to do to get through a day. and then you're not bored at all because like you're completely overwhelmed, and you can't even finish the tasks to get through one day
Right. Okay. So that's
without.
kind of a different thing. So there's like being bored, like having nothing to do, and then you can be bored being forced to do things you don't want to do.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
that's probably a boredom you do feel still sometimes, right?
Oh, I
Like
feel that definitely. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I just can't bear writing reports and stuff like this, where it's just like I've done everything. Why do I have to write this report? And I'm
Yeah.
just you stare at the blank screen, and you're like, I got to do this. I got to do this. But ChatGPT came along, and that's just like it's been such a godsend in this regard.
Okay, so I have a thought. I feel like I feel like our episode should be sponsored by ChatGPT by
Yeah, open
OpenAI
AI.
because
Give us some money. Yeah,
that's all we talk about is
yeah.
ChatGPT. Um, uh, but okay, so I've been using ChatGPT a lot since it came out. And so I feel like I now have a good sense of when something is written by ChatGPT, unless
Hmm.
someone does, you can do really clever things to make it not look like that. But just,
Yes.
the default output of ChatGPT, like I know that guy's personality. And so when I see stuff, I'm like, clearly ChatGPT. And I feel like now I have this response that when I start reading something clearly written by ChatGPT, my eyes just glaze over. I'm like,
Righto. Righto. Yeah.
and I was at the start of this year, I was on a grant committee, and as part of this committee, I had to read 40 research proposals, like really quite long ones. Well, the research bit itself was only 5 pages, but then the whole grant proposal was really quite long.
Right.
So I read like 40 of these proposals from across Canada about what people were going to do in their research,
Oh my
and
gosh.
and I kind of had two thoughts on this. One was that I was surprised that out of those 40 that I read, only one of them was clearly written by ChatGPT.
Interesting.
So that
Hmm.
was like, oh, I would have expected more people to have written them. But the other thing I was surprised was how much more difficult it was to read things that were written by people who weren't good at writing. And so I kind of, half of me was like, I wish that this was just written by ChatGPT so that it was clear and concise and structured
Yeah.
properly, and I could read it. But on the other hand, I was like, if I had to read 40 things written in the same voice, I would be incredibly
Yeah.
bored. But
It
it
would
was
just
very
drive you
interesting
nuts. Yeah.
seeing this huge
Hmm.
variety of writing styles, which you don't really get exposed to on the internet, because I feel like on the internet, everything is converging to very similar
Yeah.
writing styles. So that
That's
was interesting.
absolutely true. Yeah. I mean that experience of reading the 40 grant proposals. Okay. I get overwhelmed with just three or four.
I think I regained the stamina to read technical documents, which I think I had lost
Yeah.
over the last couple of years. So
Yeah.
that
I
was good,
definitively
and the
lost the
confidence
stamina.
to
Yeah.
read things,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Hmm.
so that was good.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting that you say the word confidence. I even lost the confidence to read stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and when you lose that confidence, you kind of get this anxiety when you're starting to
Hmm.
read something. You're like, oh my god, I can't do it, I can't do it, and yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
now it's yeah, and I
Well, there
guess
you go.
maybe
That's
to give some context for the listeners, I mean, I'm not going to go into too much details in this, but I had some serious, I mean, as you know, Tobias, I had some serious health
mhm.
issues a few years ago. And so there was like a year that I was just not like doing anything. And so it's in that time that I just lost my ability to
Right.
do a lot of stuff. So it wasn't, I mean, I definitely was doing less technical work at IBM as well in the later part, where it was more, program management, project management stuff.
Right.
But yeah, it was mostly the being sick that
Yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
made
It's
me.
killer.
And I would say even now it's been a couple of years, but it took quite a toll. And yeah, my brain is certainly not at the level that it was beforehand. um,
Right.
I think the peak capacity, like I can do everything I could do before, it just takes a lot longer to do it. So
Right.
yeah, that's kind of rough.
Well, I don't know. You might be doing more than before because you're doing multiple things in parallel. It's
Yeah,
difficult to.
but yeah, I feel like before I was doing my job and all those things in parallel
Ah.
too.
Okay. Well.
So now I
Yeah.
got rid of the job and now I'm just doing the things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to happen. You don't have to be sick. Like things can happen
Mm.
where in a career where you just drop out of the game, and
Mm.
even like 6 months, and then you getting back in is really tough. So what happened here is it won't sound like this was a bad thing. So Germany, about 4 years ago, Germany invested several billions of euros in quantum computing,
Mhm.
and and I thought, well, I'm one of the few people who's got a PhD in quantum computing. Maybe it's sort of morally my duty to apply for some of this money so it can be spent properly. Maybe I shouldn't say anything more than that. And and as part of this process, I got to interact with lots of companies for the first time in my life. As an ivory tower academic, I'd never talked to anyone from a company, and it was a fascinating experience, and I learned a lot. And it was fun at times. It involved lots of phone calls and negotiating with people and understanding workloads and writing contracts, and also legal contract work with lawyers. A whole month deleted just talking to lawyers. Uh, and then at the end of it, about a year had passed. We were lucky. We got some of our grant applications were successful, and the ball, things had started rolling again. But I'd lost a year, more or less a
Mhm.
year to
Mhm,
to,
mhm,
to
mhm.
just this kind of legwork, running around. Because I ended up being a coordinator for one of these proposals, so you have to run around even more.
Mhm.
And uh, and then after a year, it was so shocking, this feeling of being completely out of the game. I hadn't done any research, hadn't really, my mind was
Yeah.
absolutely elsewhere for a whole year. And it takes a long time to get over this.
It's really hard. It's really
Yeah.
hard.
And I mean, when you stop having the joy of finding things out, then you know something's wrong, right? And,
Yeah, I'm trying to get into a completely different line of research now because I kind of I had this kind of yeah, going back to what you were saying about this being bored.
Mhm.
I maybe I'll even step back further. Okay, when I left academia, I was pretty jaded in some ways, and I definitely I consider myself a recovering physicist for a long time, and I didn't want to see physics. I didn't want to have anything to do with physics for a couple of years. And then was this time that I got sick and I had to take quite a bit of time off, and that was the time that I was bored because I didn't have the like my brain just wasn't able to do the things that usually entertain me
Right.
and stimulate me and stuff. And then I discovered that audiobooks exist, and I
Yeah.
until that time I'd never listened to any audiobooks, and I uh, got a hold of a few Carlo Rovelli books. I don't know
All
whether
right.
you've
Yeah.
ever read any of
Yeah.
his.
Yeah. I haven't read
He's
his
one of the
books. I mean, I know the content of them, and I guess enough
yeah
to I've
yeah.
seen
So
bits and
he
pieces. Yeah.
for the listeners, he's one of the founders of loop quantum gravity. I think that's true, right? With Lee
I believe
Smolin
so.
and
Yeah.
a third person. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
I mean, John Baez, I think, also gets a lot of credit here as
okay,
early
it's
work
possible because
there.
it's definitely it's not my area of research at all. And so these were books that were just aimed at the general public, and I was listening to these books kind of. I would say I had to listen to them over and over again because there was a lot of, falling asleep and like, having these psychedelic dreams of, crazy time stuff. And so they really, I guess it would be like after quite a few years of feeling very resentful to physics, suddenly this joy, this spark of, oh my God, I started to find it so fascinating and interesting again. And then as I started to get better and better, I was thinking I really want to get back into physics, and you know started thinking how can I make this possible, and started thinking if I could start my research program from scratch, right? Because
Mhm.
my entire research program before was kind of just organically evolving, following my interests, working with whoever I was interested with. But I was like, if I was going to be now deliberate, like starting from scratch, what would my research program be? And it was just very nice to think about this, uh, and so I wouldn't say I have a concrete answer to that, but one of the things that I started to get very interested in is this work done by Rob Speckens here at Perimeter on
Yep,
quantum
yep,
causal
yep.
inference. It was kind of in line with a lot of the questions that I was having and thinking about when I was thinking about what do I want to study. And so I had the opportunity to, Rob was giving a course on quantum causal inference at Perimeter in the last month. And so I was attending these lectures every day.
Oh, wow.
And it was hard. It was so hard. I just felt like such an
When you say
idiot.
hard, you don't mean like, super complicated math hard. You mean
No,
like,
like, okay, it's it's hard because, okay, I find the math really boring.
uh-huh.
Which, there's some math that just really I find very interesting. The inherent math that was there, just maybe just because I haven't internalized it. It's a lot of, well, I would say the first half was a lot of classical probability theory in notation that
Hmm.
maybe I haven't internalized so well.
Yeah, yeah. What
And
is
so
it?
it
The
was just
changes
like,
of notation as psychological warfare is the quote that
oh,
I have
what's
from it.
that?
Changes of notation as
Yeah.
psychological warfare. Um,
And then I felt like later on when he switched to then doing the quantum generalizations of the classical ideas in a language that I was very comfortable with, then I was, I kind of felt a bit better. But I would say that the challenging bit wasn't so much attending the lectures, which, I even in the 5 years after leaving academia, I was going to many talks and lectures, and that was something I was fine with. What was hard is I decided to audit the course properly and attend the tutorials and do the problem sets as well, and
oh
that
man.
was hard. And what was
Wow.
funny
Yeah.
is that this was in the program that I used to teach in, right? So
Yeah.
I had been in that room in, being the instructor doing with the problems, and suddenly I was the student, and I'm there and I've got this, tutorial sheet in front of me, and I'm reading this stuff and I don't understand it. The
Yeah.
language doesn't match what was done in the course. I haven't done probability theory for a long time. Everyone else is there doing the work and I can't do it. And suddenly all these like
Yeah.
feelings of,
Yeah.
that I was feeling as a student were coming back. And I'm like, I can't believe we're putting our students through this. This is brutal. And
Yeah.
it's,
This
I can't
trauma flashback.
I
Yeah.
can't work in this room where there's sound. I want to go
Yeah.
work in my office where it's quiet. And
Yeah.
so it was super weird having this experience from the other side of being the student. And now, if I was the instructor in that course again, I would do things probably differently.
Right. Yeah.
um, but yeah, I guess long story short was that starting something new, even when you're very motivated by the you know big goal of what you're trying to do, if the details themselves are you haven't internalized them and you have to learn something new, it's very painful. It's just,
It's super painful. Like
yeah.
you got to give yourself some grace, right? You're used to being good at your previous
Mm,
fields of expertise, and it's
right,
just
right,
like
right.
I'm not good. I'm not good.
Yeah,
This
yeah, it
sucks.
starts
I
not
hate
being
not
good.
being good. Yeah, yeah. And so you got to give yourself a bit of grace, right? And the other thing is that the devil, in terms of advice, right? There's one advice I still kind of think is true, and it's that you got to do work, right? Most results are kind of like 99% work and 1% inspiration. Like
Yeah,
anyone can
yeah,
have ideas.
yeah.
This is, you know, you get students, especially when I was younger, and they were like, I have so many ideas. I have so many ideas about how to integrate quantum mechanics and blah, blah, blah. And so anyone can have ideas, but like
Mhm.
to actually put them into action, you need to do work. And the work is boring and it sucks.
Yeah,
And this is no exception to this rule, as far as I can tell. Like you just don't get to have the fun of ideas without some, at least there being hard work somewhere along the
yeah.
way at some point.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. And this maybe puts a spanner in my other thing, with the piano and yeah, maybe you do just need
Yeah.
to do so. And that's
But
okay, because I mean, I've been proud of the fact that I have been allocating some hours to just doing these stupid problem sets, and then
it's
after 2 hours, like feeling really good. It's like exercise. I've been,
yeah,
I hate running, I hate exercise, but when I
true.
do it, I feel really good. And so
Yeah,
it's
afterwards
just,
it's just like
yeah,
virtuous. Smug mode is engaged, and you're
yeah.
yeah, it's great. Yeah, so effective.
So
And then 2 days later, it's like screw this, I'm not going running.
say it again.
Screw this, I'm not going running.
Yeah,
Two
yeah,
days later,
exactly. That thing you were saying about anyone can have ideas, I think it's true in business as well. Like some people have like some startup idea and they're super protective about it and they don't want to talk about it because they don't want someone to steal their idea. And I'm like, no one's going to steal your idea because anyone can have an idea. I have like 5 startup ideas every day. The problem is implementing those ideas, actually turning it into a business, actually turning it into something that
if the
people
hard
want. And
work
so,
sucks, yeah,
yeah.
that's what you. So I've got a little anecdote here. Many years ago, I was just freshly not tenured, but I had my first lecturing position. And I was telling a mathematician colleague about some research I was doing. And I ended by saying, look, I'm a bit worried because I think this is really interesting and really good, but I'm a bit worried that someone might beat me to this result. Like I might get, scooped, right? This is the word that you'll hear people worrying about a lot in physics, being scooped. And he looked at me completely baffled. And he said, after a moment, he said, but how deep can the idea be if someone else can think of it?
Ah,
So I mean that's a little bit, But what I'm trying to say here is even a complementary aspect to doing the hard work. I think anyone can have ideas, and
right.
that if you've got a really good idea, probably you're going to have a real hard time convincing people that it's a good idea. That's a good sign that you have a good idea. It's just like you have to really talk about it over and over again. It's super hard, and that's also hard work.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So after that, I felt like a little bit bad, and since then, I have this attitude to being scooped. So if someone has puts out a paper on a result where I may have had an idea about it
Mm.
and done some work, I think, thank goodness, I don't have to do that now.
Right.
This is a very healthy attitude to being scooped. It's just like
Yeah.
now I can work on my other 59 ideas that I
Right,
had
because I
in
was
the
gonna say,
past
I'm
week.
sure you
Yeah,
have like a ton of papers that I remember this. I remember this in my office, just having all these sticky notes of all the papers that need to be completed, and it just
yeah,
being like, oh man, I wish I could
yeah.
just work on one
I
of
wish I
them.
could. Yeah, I wish that one would just go away,
Yeah.
and then you get scooped. It's just like rip, take
Yes.
that note down.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about being scooped anymore. And also, to a younger researcher who's this is like their first research project, and they're writing up the paper, and then they do get scooped. Like someone else does put out a paper on a similar topic. To them, I say, just finish what you're doing to the end, because I
Mhm.
guarantee you'll have a slightly different take on this problem to the other person, and that's really valuable. And I often, you often have colleagues, students, experts who say, "Yeah, I downloaded the 4 papers on this problem,
Mhm.
and I like that one for this and that one for that." There's value in saying things twice,
Yeah,
and so you're never
absolutely.
really scooped. You're never really scooped.
Absolutely, absolutely. I guess the only problem is if you were trying to get into some fancy journal and the journal is like, oh, this is yeah,
Yeah, but then well, the physical review lottery, right?
yeah,
PRL. What does it mean to get into a good journal? It means that 2 random people on this earth agreed that your paper was
yeah,
worth
yeah,
publishing. It's not a
yeah.
marker of quality. It's just statistics.
This reminds me of something. I don't know whether you were the one that brought it to my attention a long, long time ago. And somehow I don't know whether Michael Nielsen brought it to your attention or maybe he no, not my oh no, it was Carl Caves. Do you remember
Ah,
this?
okay.
Um,
I don't know.
oh, what was it? It
I'm in
was
suspense.
oh, and I take so long to clarify get my thoughts clear. You'll be waiting. It
You
was
can
it was
cut that
some
out.
uh, it was comparing two different applicants for a faculty position, and they have two papers. You're comparing two papers, one from each, and they have the same number of citations, but one is a PRL and one is a PRA or PRB or
Mhm.
something. Which one is the better applicant, or which one has the better paper? And the obvious thought is the PRL because PRL is better. But,
Yeah.
maybe the alternate thought is that, it's really easy to get citations when you're in PRL. So if you have a paper that has just as many citations in a lesser journal, maybe that's a better paper and it's a better researcher.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
a good. I like that a lot. Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty anti PRL. People would say this is just sour grapes because you don't have many PRLs.
You don't have
But
many PRLs? God.
um, yeah, but there are people who have really mastered, who've gamed the system hard,
Yeah.
and they can get published in PRL like over
Yeah.
and over and over again. No worries. They just know how to do it. And I don't know. It just feels a bit sort of shallow.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be great to just work on something you're deeply passionate about for a year and write one paper, and that's a perfectly crafted thing, and that has value for everyone?
But
Like
why can't
what
you do
Kataya
that?
does.
Why,
But you
why, why
can,
don't
you
you?
can. But like I could now, and I'm hoping to start doing
Yeah.
that again. One of the things you worry about is careers, right?
Right. Oh yeah, it's the students. Yeah, this is the thing, Yeah, people when they get tenure, they're like, "Oh, I don't need to publish anymore. I'll just put everything on the archive." But it's the students that you're
Yep,
writing with. Yeah, of
yeah. I
course.
mean, it's even worse, right? Because now you feel responsible for people.
Yeah.
Before it was just your own life, and you can screw
Mm.
your own life up. That's fine. But now you're screwing, potentially, like in quote marks, screwing up the lives of your students by not
Mhm.
giving them the advantage of getting a couple of nature papers or something in their PhD so that they can have a career later. I don't actually have I don't know what to do here.
Yeah. I don't know
I don't know what to do, but I
because I
do.
mean, you have to follow the chain of incentives, and it's whatever's at the top of that chain is what trickles down. And
Yep.
I don't think I don't think the incentives could be different because what's going on. Like, where does the money come from? The money comes from the government, and so what does the government want? The government wants um, a lot of physicists to be trained. I don't think it's so much that they want there to be professors sitting around having big thoughts, although occasionally, something very important might come out of that. But I think what they
Hmm.
want is this glut of people trained in physics who can then go off and work for you know, the defense, uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
whatever, or for the CIA or
Or,
whatever,
or, or
whatever.
just even
Like,
private companies that
yeah,
generate income, right? The physicists can probably make a dent in the GDP, right? Just by bringing their expertise to a bunch of companies, increasing the value of these companies by finding more efficient whatever solutions. It's a good thing, right? And
yeah.
so governments
So
certainly want that.
it's painful for the people going through it, but it's actually, yeah. And actually, I feel like we're always talking about how the incentives are wrong, but maybe the incentives are right given what the people who are setting the incentives want to achieve. They just
Yeah,
don't work for us. But
they don't
um,
work for us, right? I don't think the average taxpayer wants to have more professors who sit around
yeah,
and have ideas, right?
yeah,
And this is, let's face it, right? The taxpayer is our boss, and so but what they want is just enough professors to enable a more skilled workforce that will
mhm,
create IP, and then they don't need any more, right? That's how many they
yeah.
need.
Yeah, so maybe it's not even a bug in the system that 90% of physics PhD students don't get faculty jobs. Maybe that's a feature.
It's probably a feature as far as the
Yeah,
the wealth of nations is
yeah, yeah.
concerned,
Yeah.
right? Uh, you know,
What's sad though is that people going through the process get told otherwise, that they get told that they're a failure
yeah,
because,
that's ridiculous. Yeah,
and so like 90% of people are failures in a system that's designed to do what it's doing, which I
it's a
think,
tournament, right? So if you have 1,000 people entering a tournament and one winner, like it's not 999 failures. It's just people who just got ranked lower in that
yeah,
round.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I'd love to reframe that a lot if possible. That discussion in physics is probably happening in other STEM and whatever,
Mm.
all over the place. I'd love to reframe the not getting a faculty position uh, in more positive terms, so that people can have some pride in what they end up then doing, right? And not feeling bad about it.
So
because it doesn't mean you're bad. It just means that you're a little bit less connected socially than the person who beat you to that faculty job.
within a very like niche part of society,
Niche.
which
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
academia. um I don't know. I feel like it's so certainly spending all my time at Perimeter, I do feel that this was a huge problem. But then I talk to physicists who grew up in maybe more engineering based physics programs, and to them they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like throughout our entire degree we were exposed to all of the other things that we can do in industry, and we had lots of job opportunities and opportunities to network, and no one ever in my program thought that being a professor was like the only way to be successful. So I think it really
Mhm.
depends on which programs you're in. If you're in the more theoretical kind of programs
Yeah,
and where physics is isolated from the other parts of the university, then it's a problem.
yeah. It's certainly, I'm in that bubble. I'm not in the.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now I'm a little bit less, right? Because I know all these companies, and I can see that you can have a really fulfilled, interesting life outside of academia. I met so many like clever people in companies who are like arguably smarter and more effective than many of my colleagues around the world. And I'm thinking, you can have a life outside of the university system, and it can be fun. And you know what? They even get weekends, right? They get the weekend off, right?
Well, yeah, but if you're at an exec level, you're not getting your weekends off.
No, 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 no.
But
You
yeah,
are not. Yeah.
at the junior level,
C-suite
yeah,
now suck.
yeah.
There's no weekends. Um, but the other thing, yeah, there's this like there's two sides to this coin. There's the you're being told that you're a failure, and then
Mm.
people perceiving that academia is what they really want. And when they don't make it, then they're disappointed. And I think that's also something that we as certainly professors and non-professors should emphasize, that the job that you think you want isn't what you want. Um,
That's absolutely true. So when I was doing a lot of that outreach, talking about my experience transitioning from academia to the outside world, and I was posting about it a lot, I would get lots and lots of students get in touch and try and get advice on various things, and often people who are still PhD students, they were talking about how much they really, really, really want to be professors. And I think we talked about this on the last episode too.
did
And
we? I'm not
whenever
sure. It
you would
feels
ask
like
them,
something I talked about. Yeah, yeah.
whenever you ask them, why do you want to be a professor? They say, because I really want to do research. And then I'm like, ha 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 ha. Have you ever spoken to a professor? So I
What
really
you should do
encourage
is you
them
should. Yeah.
to talk to professors and actually find out what their jobs are like, and to talk to people who do other jobs and find out what their jobs are like. Yeah.
So there's this thing, right? At school, you would go to this in grade 10, 11, 12. You'd have work experience. You have your
Mm.
practicum somewhere in a job. You spend a month with the in the company or whatever in the dentist surgery, and you get to experience what the working world is like. And I remember that was extremely fascinating to me, that period of, wow, this is what the real world is like. And what we really should have is just like, for anyone who wants to be a professor, it's just like, okay, fine, come here, you have 1 month of being a professor, then after that, tell me, do you really want this
Yeah,
job?
yeah, yeah. Yep. Yeah.
It wouldn't be hard. Like, I would gladly give my tasks to someone for a month. That would be great. Just see what it's like.
Yeah. Why don't we have people shadowing people? I mean, I guess there's
Yeah, why
again
not? Yeah,
no incentive. No incentive. Why would you? There's no shortage of people who want to do a job that they don't know.
yeah.
They. Yeah. I'm
So
looking at
did
my
you have
list.
any prompt questions? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because so throughout the month I was collecting various thoughts and writing them down. Although we managed to get through an hour without without any prompt questions. Um, so let me think. Oh, okay. Here's one thing. This is just an observation. When I was editing the video from last month, I realized that at one point I completely misunderstood one thing that you were saying. And so we were, for a little while, we were having a conversation where we were saying different things. It
Okay.
was oh, or maybe I did not misunderstand it, and you can correct me. But it was the conversation about the risk portfolio,
Oh
where
yes.
what I
Yeah.
understood was that we were talking about the funding agencies having, funding different researchers, and that was their risk portfolio. But later, after
Ah,
rewatching
yeah,
it, what
yeah.
I think you meant was that each researcher has their own risk
Yes.
portfolio. They have their own different kinds of research, and some are more risky, some are less risky.
Yeah,
And
that's
yeah,
yeah.
I
So
think a
I'll
lot of
tell
what
an
I was saying
anecdote.
was in the context of the first thing. So I was like, that
But,
doesn't make sense.
that's kind of a nice confusion, like, because I think
Mm,
you can see it from both sides that way.
mm,
But I have a little anecdote about what do I mean by risk.
mm,
What do I mean really by risk portfolio research? So, and this is also like a story about how not to do things as a researcher. So, in my first postdoc position, I wanted to be I wanted to do something important, right? In my PhD, I did stuff, but I didn't feel like that was important. I wanted to be important. So I went to a conference, the most important conference in information, which is quantum information processing. It was held in the original Perimeter building in Canada that year that I went. And I went to all the talks by all the important people. And then I listened to what they thought was the most important problem. And invariably, I found a problem that I thought, wow, if I could solve that, then I'd be tremendously important, and everyone would respect me and think how wonderful I was. And I'll tell you what the problem is, because this is a warning. It's to find a quantum algorithm to find the closest vector in an integer lattice to the origin. So this sounds easy, but it's incredibly difficult if you have a bad basis for your integer lattice. And it's very important for cryptography reasons. So if you could crack this problem, then you can crack with a quantum computer some post-quantum cryptographic schemes. So it's highly relevant even to this day. And okay, this is the problem. I'm going to solve this, and I've got a postdoc. I've got a 2-year postdoc. I can spend some time doing this. And so I did the whole, I lived and breathed it. I woke up, I read all the books on this problem. I thought only about this problem, worked only on this problem, talked to people only about this problem. And a week passed, a month passed, 2 months passed. I had ideas and tried stuff out, but they always failed for this or that reason, because it's hard. It's not easy to solve this problem. And after each time it failed, you feel, for a moment you have this elation, like, yeah, I've cracked it. And then you wake up the next morning, it's like, this is so stupid. I made this mistake. It's not even close to being cracked. And then you say to yourself, okay, just one more try. And so here's the warning, right? And so you start again, and you try it again, and you have maybe fewer and fewer ideas, and you try them out, and it looks promising, and then you nosedive again. And this happened to me for 6 months. And this is when the obsession kicks in, right? It becomes, if you try something and it doesn't work after a couple of weeks, you just, whatever, a couple of weeks, I've just burned some weeks. But after 6 months, you're deep into the sunk cost
mhm,
fallacy now, right? You've
mhm.
sunk 6 months into this problem. It has to pay off now. And then you find yourself spending more time on the problem because you've invested time on the problem. And so at that moment, I managed to see sense and pull away from this problem.
Right.
Uh, but I've seen people who don't pull away from it. And so, what do I mean by risk portfolio? I mean that was an example of a highly risky problem, very very challenging. No one had been able to
Mhm,
solve it. I didn't really have any ideas about how to solve it.
mhm,
I thought they would come to me as I learned how about this
mhm,
problem.
mhm,
And another flaming risk signal is that you keep failing, and then you keep investing time because you invested time, right?
mhm.
And that's what I meant by risk. You should be. It's okay to have these problems that you come back to every so often, but boy, oh boy, please have something a bit boring and a bit straightforward that you can make progress on and not get really depressed.
On one hand, I was going to say, but what happens if to solve the problem you really do need to put 100% of your time in it? But on the other hand, I don't think that's how our brains work.
I don't think it's
Like
how
everything
we
that I
work.
know
Yeah.
about learning and thinking, you need to space things out. You need to have long periods of time where you're going for a hike and things are just brewing in the back of your brain. You can't just be
hmm hmm
focusing on like the one thing every single day.
Yeah. And so after this, I totally agree. By the way, after this, I started asking famous people how they get the famous result,
Mm,
because I thought this is an interesting thing to talk about. So every time I meet a famous person, like Pete Shaw or whatever, I would ask them, so how did you come up with your Shaw's algorithm, or how did you come up with the subfactor thing, Vaughan-Jones, and so on and so forth. And everyone has their anecdote, right? And they love to tell the story. So it's a
Which is, by the
good
way, made
conversation
up
starter.
after the fact. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. It's all
Yeah.
it's basically apocryphal. But there is insight to be had, and you hear how sort of mostly it's not the sexy Feynman bro version. It's this relatively real anecdote. Like I can't remember Pete Shaw's anecdote so well, but it was like, yeah, he said something like, yeah, I knew that it should be possible, and I just tried a bunch of things, and then it didn't work, and then I waited a while, and then I tried a different thing, and it didn't work, and he was like, this is desperately unsexy. And then Vaughan-Jones's story about his Fields Medal winning work was like, yeah, I had this equation. It was really hard to solve. And I had this old calculator where you'd have to like punch the numbers in. And I was just really stubborn. And I just kept trying every case from n equals 1 to infinity, just one after the other. And he says at the 26th case, I got an interesting number. And then that was it. So all these stories tell you that it's not about intensively working on it. It's sometimes serendipity. It's sometimes bringing threads together. It's lots of desperately unsexy failure work that we also talked about last time. And it's seldom the lone genius. I guess that's what I'm railing against here. It's seldom the lone genius who thinks for a year in a shack about this one problem.
Yeah, I wonder, because often the story is about the lone genius, but
it's very sexy. I don't know why people like this story, but
to this
so I'll say why I think it's why we like the lone genius. So it's a headcanon for in popular in literature and media and movies and so on, that an autistic person would have to be rewarded for their autism by being a genius. In one way, and so then somehow we connect then more with the character, and so this particular trope has found its way into lots and lots and lots of different TV series and movies that are very popular. So the idea that disability isn't really disability because you're kind of like it's offset by the fact that you're a genius.
Well,
And
that's an interesting take on it. I think the direction that I was going to go in was slightly different, because I think I was just remembering listening on the radio. They were talking about the cowboy trope, that there's this
right,
cowboy,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and in reality, if you go and study what the Wild West was like and what cowboy life was like, it was very integrated, and everyone needed to rely on each other, and there was no such thing as the lone cowboy.
Yep.
And I think somehow in my head that was analogous with what
but
you're
I like
talking about.
that too.
I do,
yeah.
but I like your direction that that people have to be rewarded for for their disability, which
exactly. They're disabled, but so the lone. But why do we love it? Like it's the lone cowboy thing is a wonderful analogy. That's really cool, and it's so against reality too, as you just explained to me. Like this is the one thing. This is like I tried to write about this in a LinkedIn post. Like you don't make it alone. You just don't. There's this huge support network that brings you to where you are in life. Friends, family, random meetings, financial support from agencies. You're never really alone. And if you acknowledge that and embrace that, then you can strengthen your social network.
I feel like there are other situations in life where that is also the case, but it's framed in a way that isn't so negative. So the two that I can kind of think of right now, one is the pop star, right? So you have the pop star that is like the center of attention. They're the ones that get all the adoration of the fans. But behind the pop star, there's the producers, there's the people who finance it. There's this whole industry behind it.
Choreographers, songwriters, scriptwriters.
But I feel like it's functioning well. Somehow I feel like that the pop star is, it's the public facing part, but it's not like
Yeah.
they themselves necessarily don't acknowledge that they have all of this support, or maybe they don't, but
Oh, I think they
but then
mostly
the
do, actually. Yeah.
but then the other one I was thinking of is when you're a politician or something. Then we just had elections in Canada, so I've been thinking
Yeah,
about this.
right, of course,
When you're
yeah.
running for an MP in the local whatever, you're the front facing thing, but there's this entire team that just
Yep.
is behind you to get this done, and so there's something natural about there being a single person that's just the focus of attention and is the narrative, and then you have this team behind that. But why is it not okay in the case of physics? Like,
I mean, it would be okay if these successful physicists were portrayed as having the team behind them.
right. And they
It,
do have the team. They
and
have the students. They have the
they have the
spouts. They
students.
have
Yeah.
the department administrative staff. They have the taxpayers. They have, there is this
Mhm.
huge team.
There's a
But
huge,
somehow,
huge support
yeah.
network there. Yeah. And but in popular depictions of genius,
Mm,
they're never there, right? It's just the genius in the room with the blackboard,
yeah.
struggling against, the nature of the universe itself.
Interesting. And in tech
Yeah.
as well,
And
I think you do have these tech
right. Yeah. Yeah. The
geniuses.
startup. Yeah. The lone founder
Mm,
who perseveres despite adversity, and then
yeah.
there's these employees that occasionally come along. We love it. So humans love the lone hero. I mean, it definitely goes back to the Greeks, right? With the
Right.
Odysseus
Yes.
and
Yes. Yes.
uh,
Yes.
so I don't know. But I find it very toxic. So why do I talk about this? Because I find it toxic, and I've seen so many demotivated students in my life, and I don't want to see any more. If you this broken, almost broken spirited person who comes to you and says, I can't make it. I'm not going to make it. I have to quit, or I have to move to a different station in life, and I'm really disappointed. And I would love to just dispel these myths so that people could come in, give it a good go at academia if that's what they really want to try, and feel not bad about themselves afterwards. Look back and say, I got great training, I got this great social network.
Yes, I feel like that was my mission for the last 5 years as well. Um, I feel like I failed at that mission,
Oh,
and I've decided that that's just a journey everyone needs to figure out for themselves.
maybe.
Um, uh,
But destigmatizing things is not that bad a thing to do. Like it's worth it.
it's you. Okay, so I don't even know how to phrase this. Because I think you're coming from a very genuine good place. Now you're like, oh my god, she's going to attack me, but I'm not. But even the way that you say certain things, like from the perspective of someone in the system, you're like, um, you know, you don't have academia is not the only place where you can have a fulfilling job. There are people, in companies that have fulfilling jobs, and so you're acknowledging all of these things. But like from me on the outside now, it's just like crazy that you even need to say this. The thing that needs to happen that I don't think you'll be able to do. Well, I don't know if you can change anything in the academic system to change it, but what happens, like the way that the progression happens is, um, you in academia, when you're a student, you respect the people above you, and so you value their opinion. And then as you're slowly, going out into the real world, you meet, at first, everyone you meet, they're like, oh my god, you're a PhD or whatever in physics, but you don't appreciate their appreciation of you because you don't respect them, and
Yes.
you only appreciate the respect from the people you respect. But then as you spend more and more time in the real world, you start to gain a lot of respect for what everybody else is doing. And as you gain more respect for them, then like the respect that they have for what you're doing like actually starts to mean something. And then you can start doing other things that people respect that like are not necessarily the things that are respected in academia. I don't even know how to like articulate this.
No, I think that came across perfectly clearly. Yeah,
But it's this
you know,
very
you know,
and so
I
and
think
by now that I I think about the things that I'm doing in my life, and maybe there are people still in academia who look at those and they don't respect what I'm doing, and I don't care, like, because I don't
yeah,
care what you professor who like because I don't really respect what you're doing. I mean, I respect what you're doing, Tobias, of course, and I
thanks.
do respect, but at the same time, it's I don't respect that more than what a lot of other
Yeah,
people in the real world are doing. So I kind of like don't care what they think, because a
yeah,
lot of other people think that what I'm doing is great, and I respect those people. And so, but it takes a long time for you to uh, not hold the professors in such high regard.
right.
Yeah.
See, I would that's a key point. Like, for some reason, humans like to choose guides for themselves, right? The
Mhm.
people you respect, as you were saying. I don't know why humans do this, but they want to put people on a pedestal and
Mhm.
and uh, and develop their value systems according to what other people say.
Mhm.
And be careful who you put on that pedestal is sort of rule number one, right? I don't know. Maybe you can't help it, right? Maybe you just fall in love with people, right? Maybe you just fall in love with your guiding figures,
Yeah.
and
And so I guess the point I was trying to make is I think the reason why you won't be able to change anything is because you've internalized the system.
Mhm.
And I think even as much as you might try and tell your students that the things out there, you can also have a fulfilling life out in the real world. I think you don't truly believe it. Like, you believe it intellectually, but you don't believe it in your gut. And
Yeah.
and so I
But
think
it's even worse than
like,
that. Like, I just can't imagine it, right? I've never lived out
yeah,
there. So it's not
right.
that I
And
don't believe. It's that I can't even, like, what does it even mean to exist outside of my
yeah,
life?
right. And so I think you mean really well, and probably there are things you can do to make positive change, but ultimately it's just up to every individual to go through that really painful process and come out the other side.
Don't tell me this, Aggie.
I, I
Yeah.
often see it as very similar to leaving a cult, and
Yeah.
I don't want to be one of those, oh, academia is a cult. Like, I don't mean it in this very
No, I get that.
like,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of elements that are very, very similar, and it's just very, when you're on the inside, it's very difficult to imagine what it's like on the outside. But then once you're on the outside, you're like, oh my god, like, I
Yeah.
was in there and I thought all those things. That's crazy. Those people are crazy. So
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, okay. So I'll have to then, therefore, accept that people have to go through this process of despair and rebirth, right? This
rebirth, yeah,
resurrection, the
yeah,
resurrection,
yeah.
um,
And
and that's also a good thing maybe a healthy part of growing up, right? Yeah, okay. Well, maybe I can't fix the world. Um,
didn't like ancient cultures send people to like Walkabout or something? I don't know. I'm
yeah,
really probably
talk
offending
about.
someone here. But
Yeah, I mean, here in Germany, they have something really cool. When you become a meister in, like, carpentry or plumbing or something like that, in Germany, it really means something. Like, in Australia or whatever, like, you could just decide you're a plumber and do an apprenticeship, and 6 weeks later, you can be a plumber. I exaggerate, but yeah. But here in Germany, it's a serious thing, right? You spend years being an apprentice and so on, and then you go on something called the Wanderjahre. You've got to go for a year. You've got to wander around with your tools in a backpack,
what?
finding work around Germany for, yeah. It's
That's
super
amazing.
cool, and they have this special uniform that they have to wear, and you see them on trains, and they're wandering around and learning their craft from the masters around Germany. It's such a
That's
beautiful thing.
awesome.
Yeah. So I have
Yeah,
super respect for the meisters here in Germany. You know, I'm a meister of carpentry. Wow, these people are so talented.
that's cool.
Yeah. And yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe this the Wanderjahre is a good part of everyone's life.
When I was making those shorts for the last episode, the AI picked out this like great bit where I started talking about being a woman in physics, and um, maybe they should leave because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
right.
recall
Yeah,
it, but
I
yeah,
thought that was a really striking
it's like
comment you made. Yeah.
it's bad for academia if the women are leaving, but it's not bad for the women. I think it was something like this. And so
Mhm.
this clip was like great. I'm like, this is a great clip. Um, but I didn't want to post it because I felt that it misrepresented what I actually thought and what my experience was.
Right.
And so I didn't want to put out something there that was inauthentic. And
Yep.
but the thing is, I never really talk about my experience as a woman in physics for various reasons.
Yes.
And one of the reasons is that my experience, I think, has been very different to the experiences that you usually hear about. So when like I think from what I hear from a lot of women, it's very difficult to be a woman in physics. A lot of you hear all of the things, and I absolutely like don't uh, you know invalidate that in any way. Like
Mm.
everybody has their experience, but I think mine has been quite different. I don't think I had any of the standard negative experiences that I hear, women
Which is
talk about.
wonderful, by the way. Yeah.
Uh, yes, it is wonderful, and I think the main reason I don't talk about it is I don't want it to be weaponized
Mhm.
by people against the people that do have a really hard time. I don't want people to be like,
Right. Okay.
"Oh
Yeah. Yeah.
well, Aggie like had a great time, so it can't be that bad. You guys are making it up."
Yeah.
Because I don't think people are making up. Like people
Yeah.
genuinely do have bad times,
They are
and
legitimately not making this shit up.
but anyway, but so sorry, I was talking a lot, but just to like wrap it up, I want to put the statement I said in context, which is that
Mhm.
in the end, I did have a bad time in academia, but I don't think it was
Oh, yeah.
because of any of those things. I think the
Right.
problem was uh, the fact that I am very strongly a generalist and not a specialist. And I think in order to be successful in the long run in academia, you really do need an element of being able to go deep into something and
Mhm.
become a deep, deep expert in something. And I am definitely an expert in my field, but I don't think I'm as deep as I would have needed to be, a world class like professor somewhere, or to even have. Well, I don't know. I think I could have
Yep.
gotten a faculty job somewhere in the world, but what, whatever. I don't think I wanted a faculty job for
Right.
starters.
Yeah.
Um, but the point being that being a generalist got me further in my career than I should have gone because it compensated for a lot of things. But in the end, it didn't get me to the end because I needed to really buckle down and focus on one thing, and I just didn't want to do that. And so I was always doing many, many different things that were then bad for my career. And I felt like I was a failure because I was doing all of those things. And then when I moved into industry, uh, being able to do all of those things was now a huge plus. Like suddenly I was an expert at being able to do all of those things. And I just felt like I
Multi-potentialite. Right.
was like in my element. Like I was
Yeah.
now successful because of who I am, not despite of who I am.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of women have had that experience. And I haven't, fact checked this, but I expect there's some correlation between being a generalist and being female. And I think maybe this is why like women who
Mhm.
do leave academia actually find that, oh, this is like much better. I'm now like, I can breathe, I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
really long story. Sorry about that. But
I'm going to bullet point some of the things that you said because I want to
okay.
respond to one or two of them.
Okay.
One was actually about being amongst people of a given gender. I'll come back to that in a second. The other is academia rewarding specialization versus multi-potentialism. and that's what drove you away, actually. So I find the latter point to be very interesting observation because indeed, now I never really thought about it that way, but you don't appoint professors of being multi-generalists, right? There is not a professor of general science. In fact, they get named, professor of, uh, metaphysical, algebraic, matrix topology, or some nonsense, right? You always get given a name, right? And that's your specialization. And uh, and so, as a generalist, you're a disadvantage in the system because, like, to reach the high, a thought leading position, you have to literally have a title. And so, does academia not need generalists? Is the question that there's a question
Well, I think
implied
they do,
by this
because to be a
observation? I think
successful
they do.
professor, as
Yeah,
in the profession, it's good to have
yeah,
all of those skills. It's
yeah.
just in the research
It's
aspect, which
exactly.
is the thing that gets you the job.
Yeah, exactly. The skill of the generalist is desperately needed in academia because if you have a whole bunch of hyper-focused people on one subject area, they'll never really come together and enjoy the network effect of being in a group. And multi-potentialites or generalists or whatever you want to call them have the ability to communicate with everyone and and bring people together. Like, I really respect and value these people. And the example here would be like my colleague Clemens Hammerer, right? He's a theorist, and a really good one. But he has mastered the ability to talk to experimentalists. He's almost an experimentalist. He's not quite there because he's a theorist and he hasn't been in the lab really. But if I want to talk to an experimentalist, I knocked on Clemens's door and I said, Clemens, can you come along? And then we could have a really wonderful conversation because then Clemens could translate for me. And this is, and I imagine that a wonderful world, a utopia where we have some generalists in the institute, and when you want to talk to someone else, you just say, "Can you come along to this meeting with the chemist, or come along to this meeting with the biologist, or something?" What a wonderful world that would be. I would enjoy that a lot.
But
And then
even
the
so,
other
you're
thing, yeah,
talking about generalists within a very narrow research,
indeed,
narrow scope of
that's too
doing
narrow,
research.
right? Yeah.
But I wanted to do YouTube videos, and I wanted to do, events, and I wanted to do like lots of other things that were
Right.
not research, and like weird pedagogy things, and
Yeah. Okay. So
and
obviously I interpret the generalist as a very specific thing, but you are, and I certainly see value in being even more general in the sense that you're saying.
But I don't, and I do think that there is value in being able to do those things, but I don't actually necessarily want to force that into the role of a professor. Like, it might not be
Yeah.
bad. Maybe a professor should really just do the things that professors are supposed to do, which is research, teach, some admin. Like, if
Yeah.
I want to do all of those other things, I should go have a different job that's not professor,
Right.
which is what I
Maybe.
did, and that's fine.
Yep.
But somehow, hang on, I've got something bumping up. Yeah, and that's fine. But somehow I didn't realize it was fine until after the fact. Like, I felt
Yeah.
like a failure that I didn't want to do that. Oh, okay. So here's an interesting thing that is more in our area of expertise. So, and you can tell me if you've come across this, but in this course that I was attending by Rob Speckens, he gives a lot of interesting little statistical paradoxes, and one of them is, so if you imagine you have people who, I guess, still a subset of people who want to be professors, okay, and they get evaluated on whether they're a good teacher or a good researcher. And imagine, so you've got one axis and the other axis, and in principle you can be anywhere on this axis, but let's like break it up into good, bad, good teacher, bad teacher, good researcher, bad researcher. And then you like throw everyone on this scatter plot, and there's no correlation at all between these things. But then you post select on people who got
Yep.
faculty positions, right?
Uh-huh.
So you can get a faculty position if you're good at research, or if you're a good teacher. I've probably got them the wrong way, right? If you're good teacher, good research, or both. But if you're bad at both, you get eliminated. So now if you
Right.
post select on eliminating these people, suddenly there's an anti-correlation with what's left between being a good researcher and being a good teacher.
Yeah.
And we do feel that in the department. We think,
It's
that, if you're good at one, you're bad at the other. But it's a weird statistical anomaly post-selected on eliminating people who are bad at both. And I'd never come
fascinating.
across that. And I was like, oh, that's neat.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't actually come across that either, but I have come across the idea that post-selection can do weird things.
Mhm.
With the power of post-selection, you can do quite a lot of stuff. Like you can win the lottery with the power of post-selection.
Do
You
you want
buy
to
a lottery
elaborate on that?
ticket.
Is it just as silly if you know what the
It's a silly.
answer is? Yeah.
It's a silly one. You buy a lottery ticket, and if you don't win, you commit suicide. So,
Uh-huh.
so
That's
if you're
terrible.
alive, you've won the lottery.
Okay.
It's a stupid story, but
Mm.
that's a lot could be done with post selection, and it's a super important part of quantum computers today. Like, if we want to take this discussion right to say quantum computing as it is at the moment, a large amount of getting a quantum computer to do computation is post-selection. You run it, try a whole bunch of preparations, try to get it to work, and then you throw out all the unsuccessful attempts at creating some initial resource state.
But do you
And
just
then
throw them out through destructive interference, or are you
no,
actually throwing them out? Like,
you do like 10,000 repeats, and then you only take that 1% that gave you the initial resource state, and then you could use that as a kind of seed to build up. I'm talking about cluster
oh, I
state
see,
quantum
I see, I see,
computing.
I see.
Yeah,
You don't mean like
yeah,
on the logic of the computation. You mean like you mean like
state, yeah,
measurement-based quantum computing, where you need to,
exactly that.
yeah,
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 that's what
I
I was
see.
aiming at. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
And like it's so surprising to me. Like when I started quantum computing, there was this thing called the DiVincenzo criteria, right? You
Mhm.
could only have a quantum computer if it fulfilled all this
Mhm,
7 list
mhm,
of
mhm, mhm.
points. And for the longest time, I thought that's what it meant. But then, and this is somehow I don't know, an analogy for how things are. Now 20 years later, what a quantum computer means doesn't look anything like the DiVincenzo criteria anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
It's got post selection in it. It's got repetitions and noise, and it's so weird. It's so different from what I initially expected.
That's interesting. And I mean, I do agree with that. And kind of, yeah, I have not come across people using the DiVincenzo criteria in research.
Yeah,
Like, I need to see it's something that's like when you're doing a course, like people tell you there's this DiVincenzo criteria that then no one ever uses. But
yeah.
so do we have, this is something maybe I should know, but do we have a more modern criteria for how to
People talk about
try?
magic state preparation, the ability to prepare magic states. I don't like that one at all. I don't
Mm.
think anyone's written it down yet because
Mhm.
there's this. I guess here's an interesting direction to go. Right, not enough theorists talk to experimentalists.
Right.
Uh, it's like my whole view of physics completely changed when I started talking to experimentalists, and
Yeah, and so
in
you can
particular,
come
my
up with all
understanding of
sorts of
quantum mechanics.
criteria. You can come up
Yeah,
with all sorts of criteria, but then to actually make the thing work is just like a different kettle of fish. Like you
it's
actually have
totally
to like
different. Yeah,
get in the lab and make it work.
theorists dream up these things that they say are easy. They say, "Oh, Clifford gates, Pauli gates are easy," and then you speak to the experimentalists, and they're like, "Well, I don't know. I could do a sigma x maybe." You know, and so I find it absolutely stunning that we could continue as a field, and we still don't talk to each other enough.
Hmm.
And if you listen to what your friendly experimentalist says, and they're happy to talk to you, they'll tell you things that are easy and things that are hard. And then you
Mhm.
might walk away and say, "Oh, okay, maybe local unitaries are
Mhm.
hard, and that some gates are easy." That's just an example. But the more deeper thing is go speak to your experimentalists because they'll teach you about quantum mechanics. And this was a real eye opener for me. Like uh, I completely threw out my understanding of the postulates of quantum mechanics after speaking to experimentalists. And it's a result of the following question: which operator are you measuring? Right. So this is I invite any theorist who's listening to go to the friendly quantum experimentalists and ask them that question. And because one of the popular postulates of quantum mechanics is that the measurement postulate, which is an observable is specified by a Hermitian operator, and when you perform a measurement, you'll get these posterior states with certain problems, and you're like, so measurements are Hermitian operators, right?
Yeah, but I
And then
mean, don't you just translate that in your head to be like, what's the basis of my measurement? Like the Hermitian
yeah,
operator tells you the basis, and then
indeed.
that
But
does
even
have to
that, go
be
to your friendly experimentalists and ask them what's the basis, and you get the most amazing spectrum of answers. But usually, you get the when they explain to you how they measure something, they tell you a story. And this is really important. They tell you, okay, we first apply this field and then apply that field
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
interact with this thing, and then we do that thing, and then
yeah,
we amplify it, and that's our measurement. That's how we read
yeah,
out the information. And after listening to this, 5, 6, 7, 10 times, I was like, what is this measurement postulate? How did theorists come up with
yeah.
this crap? It's nothing to do with what experiments do. And that completely changed the way I thought about quantum mechanics. Happened about 10 years ago.
I mean, I agree with the sentiment there that there's a lot of nuance and a lot of very interesting stuff. But I mean, ultimately, it does connect to the
It,
measurement postulate,
yeah,
right?
it's not wrong.
I mean, it
It's
has to.
yeah,
So,
yeah, right. I mean, it works, right?
yeah.
It's not wrong or anything, but I found it completely fascinating how the postulates that we take as kind of gospel, as handed down to us from
Mhm.
1927 by
Mhm,
the,
mhm,
the,
mhm,
the
mhm, mhm.
forefathers of quantum mechanics,
Yeah.
actually bear little resemblance to the way quantum mechanics is done today.
Mhm.
And I teach quantum mechanics very differently now. And I was, as we were coming into this podcast, I was wondering if I would talk about how I think that actually we do need to write a new book on quantum mechanics after all. Uh, uh,
Do you think so?
I think so. For the longest time I thought this is bullshit. There's no
Have
need
you? I
for a
mean,
new
because I
quantum
feel like
mechanics
there's
book.
a new book on. Maybe it's more on quantum computing, but there's like a whole bunch of new books coming out all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like,
Do we need another one? Well, I think we
yeah,
do.
maybe
So
we do.
here's my rant, right? 1927 quantum mechanics was conceived in the
Mhm.
Solvay conference. And then most of the books we read today are about 1.5 generations away from these people. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So these people went out and told people about quantum mechanics in the literature. And then the first textbooks got written. And they have, famous authors like Schiff and Messiah and so on. And Dirac, right, has a book on quantum mechanics. And that's how quantum mechanics was, right? Because
Mhm,
these
mhm.
people, the people who conceived of the theory, that's how they wrote it down the first way. And then lots of people just learned quantum mechanics from these books. And it was even recommended in the 90s that you go to Schiff or Messiah or Dirac to learn quantum mechanics, or von Neumann. And then other people learn quantum mechanics and they're like, okay, how do I write a textbook on quantum mechanics? I'll go to Schiff, Messiah, blah, and I'll learn it, and then I'll write my own take on it
Mhm.
without sort of reflecting on the literature and how they feel it evolved in the past 80 years. And so the textbooks you see today have this weird kind of uncanny resemblance to books that are written practically in the 20s.
But when you say textbooks today, do you mean textbooks 15 years ago?
That's also a good point.
Because
um,
because okay, so I get a lot of like people coming up to me who are trying to get into like quantum now,
yeah,
and they're like, "What textbooks do you recommend?"
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm
I get
like,
this
"I
asked a
don't
lot.
know. I learned from Michael's book, but
Yeah,
that's 20 years old, and I don't recommend you start there." There are probably a
yeah.
lot of newer,
I don't
different
know.
books, but I don't
I
know them
haven't looked
because I
around,
don't
right?
learn quantum mechanics
Yeah,
anymore,
I
so I
don't.
don't really know.
Well, I kind of do, right? Because I have to teach it.
Right.
So I'm a lazy person, and I want to find a textbook that does it
Yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
way. In the end, I couldn't. I couldn't find one, but I did have a colleague who'd written one. So Reinhard Werner has a textbook on quantum mechanics.
Okay.
Sadly for our viewers, it's written in German,
How
and
old is it though?
it's about 20, 30 years old now. This
Okay,
textbook,
right? So
but
so I
it's not
feel like you
published.
should
It's not
check,
published.
was there anything else that was written in the last 5 years that satisfies the criteria you're talking about? I don't know, have you read Terry's book? I mean, it's not a textbook, but like he has a very different take on how
I
to
should read that.
view this
Yeah, I
stuff.
like Terry's take on anything. Anything Terry
Yeah,
Rudolph says, you should
yeah.
listen to and think about twice. Yeah. Um, no, I haven't. Okay, I admit it. I haven't looked at it. Uh, yeah. Okay. Maybe I'm ranting. Maybe I'm just shouting at clouds.
No, no, I mean, you could very well be right. I just think maybe we forget how old we are and forget that, because I just wanted to check whether you meant the books you learned from or the books that are coming out now.
Not the ones that are coming out now. Now I admit that,
Yeah.
but I am occasionally asked to review them. So I don't see anything really new in the way we present stuff. But okay, I have to look. Maybe that's my homework, right? Next time we talk, I will have to have looked at some modern textbooks.
And I could be wrong in the sense that I just see all the books being more on quantum computing
Mhm.
because that's just where anyone's going to buy
Yeah,
anything with quantum computing
yeah.
in it. But
I'm
quantum
not actually
mechanics is
saying.
a different
Yeah,
story.
I'm not. I definitely don't want to present quantum mechanics by quantum computing. This is not what I want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do. Like the hydrogen atom is still the number one quantum number one system you need to know. Forget the harmonic oscillator. Like the hydrogen atom is the only exactly solvable model of quantum mechanics that's really useful, and
Do you
it's
have a new
ridiculously
insight
useful.
there
I don't
that
have super lots of insights,
yeah.
but any textbook would have to cover the hydrogen atom,
Mhm,
and that wouldn't be covered in a quantum computing book.
mhm, mhm.
And because it's so remarkably, unbelievably important for physics, like this is how we measure the distances to other galaxies and stuff. So, is the hydrogen atom and the spectrum. And so, yeah,
Um,
the perfect yeah,
no, no, I'll let you finish.
the perfect quantum textbook would have somehow this more de-Heisenberg omeleted version of quantum mechanics where you cover the hydrogen atom and somehow at the end of it you don't think of measurements as being associated with Hermitian operators. Okay, that's
Would you write the textbook in a way that really, how do I want to phrase it? What's the opposite of explicitly?
mhm.
Implicitly takes some kind of philosophical viewpoint of like the interpretation of quantum mechanics. Because I feel
Yeah,
like
okay,
the
yeah,
problem is
yeah,
as
yeah,
soon as you want to be kind of modern and agnostic to whatever modern, I don't know if those are the same thing, but modern
yeah,
in terms of how to interpret quantum mechanics, then it's really difficult to write a textbook.
yeah.
Uh,
I'd love to
because,
write a textbook where where I expose the points where you have to make a choice about an interpretation and to explain the values of each interpretation. That would be cool.
yeah, I feel like you'd have to be explicit in that you're doing
Yeah.
that you're
Mhm,
taking,
mhm. You
you're
have to be
doing all
really,
this in
yeah.
the realist interpretation or something. And
Yeah. I
but
mean, you
then
can present up to a point. Yeah. Yeah.
how do you be explicit about it without then opening up this can of worms?
Well,
So
maybe you should open up this can of worms. I mean, I just don't think quantum mechanics is finished.
no, no. But then
Mm.
when I feel like whenever somebody tries to be conscious of that, then the textbooks just don't make pedagogical sense. Or what? Not even textbooks, but the way that you explain it, you've got boxes and settings
Yeah.
and like
Mm.
measurement boxes and source boxes and stuff. And I know, which I actually find
Uh,
very intuitive because I kind of grew up on that. But it's probably not the best way to
yeah.
explain
I
physics.
mean, it's tricky. I, Lots of physics isn't finished, and I think textbooks present this picture as fields of physics as being closed entities,
Mhm, mhm,
where it's all done, and the research that we're doing is somehow just applications. But
mhm,
there's real like holes of knowledge in quantum mechanics. There's holes of knowledge in quantum field theory. There's even in classical mechanics. There's sort of stuff that we don't quite really um, we haven't really got to terms with yet. And electrodynamics as well. It's really weird. And yeah, I always got annoyed when I was a student and they'd tell us this stuff, and then I'd find out later that they'd lied to us, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd love a book where they just sort of openly admit, this is the limits of our knowledge. This is where we've come to, and some people think this, and some people think that.
Yeah, but I also I can imagine if I was reading a book and it said this is how we're explaining it to you now, but next year you'll learn that in fact this is not true. I kind of
Yeah,
wouldn't put the effort into trying to internalize it, and maybe you wouldn't learn. So
yeah,
so I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I know. I'm sure I wouldn't have learned it myself
Hmm.
if I thought, oh, this is a lie. I'm not going to learn this. Yeah, I don't know. You can see that I'm not. My mind isn't fully made up on this topic,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
which I think I think the messy areas of physics is where the fun is, right? So it's when I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other, or I'm confused. That's where the fun is, right? All this stuff that's been proved and settled. That's so boring.
yeah. So I think we're coming to the end, but I wanted to
I
ask:
agree.
is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we wrap up? I kind of led the conversation more this
No,
year.
that's great. I mean, like,
well, last time too.
that's super. I love it. Look, there's loads of things I'd love to touch on, but I think that's the whole point of having another episode, right? Like, what is it? You said 500 subscribers.
Yeah, we need to get to 500. No, well, we need to get to 30,000. I want 30,000
30,000,
subscribers. That'll make me
3,000
happy.
hours. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we could manage it.
But are we going to do the next episode live?
I really hope we can. So I've got the equipment here. I've got a decent camera. We've got a mic set up. It'll be totally different because we'll be like sitting next to each other on a couch.
Yeah, and I don't know when the last time I saw you in person, was that in London or something? That would have
It
been
was
like
in
15
London
years ago or 10 years ago.
about 10 years ago. That's right. Yeah. No,
To
I think
do
that'd be
it.
super cool if we could do the next episode in person.
Cool.
I'll
For the
certainly-
listeners, I'm going to be in Germany next week. So I'm going to next month. So I'm going to be driving up to visit Tobias and my godmother, who's in a nearby town.
Looking forward to it. Really, it's going to be fantastic.
Cool. And I think I liked how you ended the last episode with your
this meeting
so
is
I think
over.
that should be our thing now, that you end the episode.
Yeah. All right, guys, this meeting is over.